Hello everyone and welcome to today's program. I'm Tang Jingyuan. Right as China's annual 2 sessions kicked off this year, we saw the familiar playbook rolled out once again, grand promises paired with motivational rhetoric. On March 4th, Lu Qingjun, spokesperson for the 4th session of the 14th National People's Congress, made a headline-grabbing statement during a press briefing. Over the next 10 plus years, China's middle income group could exceed 800 million people. At the same time, he stressed that China's policy environment is transparent, stable, and predictable, and that the country has been, is, and will continue to be an ideal, secure, and promising investment destination for foreign businesses. This narrative presents a sweeping, optimistic vision. On one hand, it highlights the sheer size of China's consumer market. On the other, it reassures foreign investors that the environment here remains reliable with boundless opportunities. The problem, however, is that this message doesn't hold up under scrutiny. China is currently grappling with prolonged weakness in the real estate sector, sluggish domestic demand, mounting local government debt, and intense pressure on youth employment. Some foreign investors are adopting a wait-and-see approach, while others are actively pulling back or exiting. Against this backdrop, loudly touting an 800 million middle-income group in the near future feels more like an attempt to pump up market sentiment than a sober economic assessment. Public reactions online were swift and blunt. People asked, "Where does that number come from? Everyone is downgrading their consumption. How can the outlook be so rosy?" Others pointed out, "That's nonsense. In the next 10 plus years, the total population aged 20 to 60 won't even reach 800 million. Do you believe that?" These criticisms sting, not because netizens enjoy being contrarian, but because everyday reality has already diverged sharply from this grand narrative. This isn't a new claim. Back in January 2024, Premier Li Qiang made a similar remark at the World Economic Forum in Davos, stating that China's middle-income group currently stands at over 400 million and would double to 800 million in the coming decade. In other words, Lu Qingjun was simply echoing a line that had already been floated 2 years earlier. This pie wasn't freshly baked for this year's 2 sessions, it was just reheated. So in this episode, we'll focus on unpacking this topic in depth. If you appreciate this kind of analysis, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. First point, talking about middle income without defining clear standards is itself a form of statistical sleight of hand. The official benchmark, often cited by Chinese authorities, defines the middle income group based on a family of 3 with annual household income between 100,000 and 500,000 RMB. It sounds plausible at first glance, but a closer look reveals major issues. The range is extraordinarily wide. At the lower end, 100,000 RMB annually, that's roughly 8,300 RMB per month for a family of 3. At the upper end, 500,000 RMB, it's over 40,000 RMB monthly. Are these really the same socio-economic class? In first-tier cities, the lower group may struggle to afford even basic dignified living, while the upper group approaches what many would consider upper middle or near wealthy status. Lumping such vastly different households into one middle-income basket creates an illusion of a bloated middle class. Even more critically, raw income figures don't capture real living conditions. Official metrics focus on income, but what ordinary people actually feel is how much is left after unavoidable fixed expenses. Mortgage or rent payments, children's education, elderly medical care, social insurance, retirement savings. These are what truly determine whether a family lives comfortably, has discretionary spending power, or dares to plan for the future. This leads to the second core issue. Talking only about income while ignoring expenditures and debt is intellectually dishonest. Many so-called middle-income households in China today are more accurately described as superficially middle class, but financially strained, meeting the numbers on paper while cash flow remains tight. Homes often exhaust family savings across generations, with mortgages stretching 20-30 years. Children's education resembles an arms race, with Chengcheng Diejia costs for extracurriculars, interest classes, and school selection. A single major illness in an elderly parent or sudden job loss can snap the entire household financial chain. Even if they qualify statistically as middle income, these people rarely feel like middle class. What they face daily isn't consumption upgrading. It's debt servicing, survival mode, and fear of any mishap. Take housing debt, the biggest burden for most families. In first-tier cities, mortgage or rent payments routinely consume 30 to 50% of household income, sometimes more. A family might appear to earn over 10,000 RMB monthly or 100,000 plus annually. But after deducting mortgage, car loan, education, elderly care, and basic living costs, disposable income often shrinks to almost nothing. Middle income, in many cases, is just a flattering accounting entry. A particularly stark figure comes from the 2025 China Resident Financial Debt Survey report. Among China's 1.15 billion adults, 837 million carry debt, for a debt penetration rate of 73%. That means roughly 2 out of every 3 adults live with debt. In first-tier cities, the rate is even higher. Beijing stands at 76.8%. Among those 837 million indebted individuals, 625 million carry 2 or more types of debt, e.g., mortgage plus credit card or mortgage plus consumer loans, accounting for 74.7%. The ratio of household debt to disposable income reaches 64.7%, indicating extremely high overall leverage. In plain terms, for every 10 RMB earned, 6.5 RMB goes toward debt obligations. Even spread over repayment periods, this burden weighs heavily like a mountain. One netizen's comment captures the sentiment perfectly. I earn 8,000, 10,000 RMB a month, but after car and mortgage payments of 6,000 RMB, there's nothing left. I used to travel, now I can't even think about it. I'm already 30 with 0 savings. Life feels unbearable, pure misery. This is the raw, visceral poverty feeling many in the so-called middle-income group experience. Not numerical poverty, but the suffocation of endless bills, a hollowed-out future, and 0 breathing room. And this is only for those with some income. China still has vast numbers of truly poor people who don't even qualify for the middle-income label. As far back as May 28, 2020, then Premier Li Keqiang publicly acknowledged at a press conference that around 600 million Chinese earn roughly 1,000 RMB per month, barely enough to rent in a mid-sized city. That statement caused a major stir, ripping a huge hole in the official moderately prosperous society narrative. By 2023, economist Li Xunlei cited research estimating that about 964 million people earn less than 2,000 RMB monthly. So on one side, we have authoritative data showing 600 million at 1,000 RMB month and 964 million below 2,000 RMB month. Just a few years later, officials proclaim an impending surge to over 800 million middle-income people in the next decade plus. How exactly is this leap supposed to happen? Through industrial upgrading, broad wage increases, wealth recovery for households, or simply by lowering thresholds, widening definitions, and drawing an even bigger pie? Don't forget, for decades, the most important wealth accumulation channel for China's middle class, or middle income group in official terms, wasn't wages or stocks, but real estate. Yet that's precisely the sector that's been hammered hardest in recent years. In his March 5th government work report, Premier Li Qiang again acknowledged the need to focus on stabilizing the real estate market because the issue can no longer be avoided. Reuters, citing the report, noted that Li Qiang admitted ongoing pressures from a deteriorating real estate crisis, high local government debt, and insufficient domestic demand. Authorities plan to continue ramping up fiscal spending, set up consumption promotion funds, and expand special purpose bonds to support growth. A genuinely stable, confident economy wouldn't simultaneously promise massive middle-class expansion while relying on heavy fiscal stimulus to prop up real estate, consumption, and local finances. In reality, the real estate crisis has inflicted the deepest damage precisely on the core supposed middle class. Many urban families once felt secure not because of high salaries, but because 1, 2, or even 3 properties kept appreciating. Now, with prices broadly falling, transactions shrinking, and asset liquidity drying up, many realize they aren't propertied middle class. They're highly leveraged homeowners. Paper wealth evaporates, future expectations darken, and consumption naturally contracts. Why have typical middle-class items, new smartphones, luxury cars, high-end watches, pianos, cooled dramatically in recent years? Simple. The people who used to spend freely have stopped because wallets and confidence have both deflated. So the real flaw in Liu Qingjian's claim of over 800 million middle-income people in the next 10 plus years is its deliberate avoidance of key realities. What standard is being used? Should we deduct mortgage and car payments? Account for urban living costs, factor in debt levels, consider unemployment risks? If none of these are addressed and only a shiny total headcount remains, this isn't describing reality, it's manufacturing an illusion. Now let's turn to his other statement, which deserves even closer scrutiny. China offers a transparent, stable, and predictable policy environment for opening up and will remain an ideal, secure, and promising investment destination for foreign businesses. The gap between this claim and on-the-ground reality may be even wider than the 800 million figure. Consider the American Chamber of Commerce in China. Its 2026 China Business Climate Survey, released in January, found that economic slowdown has overtaken US-China relations as the top business challenge for American firms in China. 64% of respondents listed slowing growth as their primary concern. 76% cited market access barriers affecting operations, and 26% worried about inconsistent law and regulation enforcement. What does this tell us? The biggest headaches for US companies are no longer just geopolitics, but China's own sluggish growth, entry barriers, and policy execution inconsistencies. A truly transparent, stable, and predictable market wouldn't have 3/4 of firms complaining about unfair access. A genuinely reassuring environment wouldn't leave inconsistent enforcement as a persistent worry. Japanese businesses tell a similar story. On February 10th, the Japanese Chamber of Commerce in China released a survey of 1,427 Japanese firms operating here. Only 1% reported any improvement in the Chinese economy. Just 17% planned to increase investment, while over 40% intended to reduce or halt investment. These aren't media outlets hyping negativity. These are long-established Japanese companies deeply embedded in China's manufacturing supply chains. Autos, electronics, precision machinery, chemicals, retail. They have every incentive to believe in China, yet their verdict is cautious to outright pessimistic. European firms send equally stark signals. Last December, the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China reported that 1/3 of member companies are considering shifting procurement away from China. Nearly 70% cited constraints from China's export controls, and 40% said the Ministry of Commerce processes export licenses slower than promised timelines. EU Chamber President Jens Eskelund bluntly stated that China's export controls increase uncertainty, exposing firms to production slowdowns or even halts. Note the contrast. Liu Qingjian promises predictability. European businesses experience the opposite. Whose account should carry more weight, the official spokesperson's talking points or the actual surveys from foreign companies that have committed capital, orders, and supply chains to China? The answer is straightforward. Moreover, if China truly were the ideal, secure, and promising destination Liu described, why do official FDI numbers keep declining? According to the Ministry of Commerce, actual utilized foreign investment nationwide in 2025 totaled 747.7 billion RMB, down 9.5% year on year. Why? Capital doesn't watch propaganda videos or heed slogans. It evaluates 3 things: profitability, rule stability, and future predictability. Right now, American firms worry about slowdown and access barriers. Japanese firms about policy instability and weak demand. European firms about export controls and opaque approvals. The result shows up in the data. Foreign capital continues to hesitate, scale back, relocate, or diversify. Zooming back to the 2 sessions, on March 5th in his government work report, Premier Li Qiang set the 2026 GDP growth target at 4.5% to 5%, the lowest non-pandemic year target since 1991. He openly acknowledged insufficient domestic demand, real estate weakness, and high local debt. Reuters highlighted his admission of a sharp supply-strong demand-weak imbalance. In plain language, factories can still churn, exports can hold up, but consumption is increasingly feeble. Ordinary people aren't unwilling to spend. They're afraid to, reluctant to, or simply unable to. Ultimately, Liu Qingjian's 800 million middle-income remark isn't about precise economic description, it's political messaging. Ignoring standards while touting middle income is concept shifting. Ignoring spending and debt while focusing on income evades reality. Ignoring foreign business surveys while claiming transparent stability is self-delusion. A genuine middle class isn't just a statistical cohort. It's people who, after covering mortgage, education, medical, and retirement costs, still have money left to spend, confidence to plan ahead, and security to face risks. Friends, how many such people actually exist in China today? 400 million? Will we reach 800 million in the next decade? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.